Good evening, good people. This is your host, Calvin Anderson, for the Check-In with podcast. We have another major guest today. Dr. Sharmin is the clinical director of the Mind Remedy and a HCPC-registered counselling psychologist. With over 8 years of experience in the mental health field, she has worked in public health sector, the NHS, private settings, schools and charities providing treatments to children, young adults, and adults and couples. Her therapeutic work involves an integrative approach whereby she combines different therapies to tailor the treatment to you. This could involve CBT, psychodynamic, CAT. Her work focuses on the here and the now with an exploration of childhood experiences to uncover the roots of the psychological distress. Her therapeutic work is governed by person-centered counseling, providing non-judgmental, empathetic, and a genuine approach. Dr. Sharman often carries out assessments and reports. She has written letters and reports for schools, universities, the council, and others. She is also able to offer medico legal reports for legal cases. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can hear, her skill set is vast. It is great depth. It carries great depth, and she's someone who really goes by the book to make sure that all of her clients have a great and fulfilling experience. So, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Dr. Sharmin Aktar. Sharmin, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Calvin.
No,
Really nice.
honor. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. Ladies and gentlemen, Sharmin said to me, which is surprising when you hear her speak, that this is her first podcast, which is so like, what do you mean? You should be on podcasts all the time. But no, I'm grateful that you were able to say yes. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing all the topics that we speak about today. For the listeners, Sharmin, give us just your journey. Like, why psychology? Like, why did you want to go into this specific field? Why this?
It's a question I get asked a lot, Calvin, and I think there's a lot of obviously people interested in this field now as well. So I get asked this quite a lot, and I always think back to one of my experiences when I was in sixth form. I was doing quite a variety of different A levels. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was really interested in all my A levels and I could see a career path in all of them, but I just needed to kind of figure out what I wanted to kind of like which path I wanted to go down. And it's interesting because I was doing one of the subjects I was doing was textiles, which is completely different to what I do now. But I was on this weekend project thing in down near Hackney College somewhere around there. And it was like a weekend events for like fashion and learning how to make garments and all of that. And I met a lovely, lovely occupational therapist there who was telling me, or was just asking me what I wanted to do. And she thought I was really invested in fashion and that's what I wanted to do. So, a surprise, I was like, I just don't know yet. I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I was telling her I was really interested in psychology, but I had no idea what I wanted from that or how I could even get to becoming anything in psychology. I come from a background, obviously, I'm South Asian myself, so there's no other therapist or psychologist or anyone even in like working in mental health. So there wasn't anybody I could speak to find out more about. So for me, it was and she was telling me she's an occupational therapist at a dementia ward and that she would love to show me around where she works because there's a psychologist there that they have who carries out assessments and things like that for her clients. And I was over the moon. I was like, yes, let's do this. This will give me exactly what I need to know. This will tell me, or show me a little bit about what therapists, psychologists do in this field, you know?
Yeah.
So we arranged to meet, and I was fortunate enough to kind of shadow her for a day. She was actually based in East London, so that's where I visited her. And in that ward, there was one person who stood out to me. And I'll always remember him because he was, firstly, of the same background as me, but he was in a ward where no one else understood him. So someone had taken a belonging of his, but he didn't have the words or the language rather to communicate, to the staff that someone else, another patient, had actually taken something that belonged to him. And you could see he was really distressed, and he just was not, happy about this whole situation. And I think obviously, if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have seen that, and I wouldn't have seen how maybe, the importance of having like a diverse um, workforce in any setting, really, but also especially in London, and, when you're working with such multicultural individuals.
Mm.
So for me, that really like set the tone. I was like, wow, we definitely need more therapists, counselors, psychologists in this field that can speak different languages to be that voice or voice of support for that individual who isn't able to, speak English adequately to say that's what's just happened to me isn't fair.
Yeah.
So I always think back to this experience as something that has been really, really it left something with me, and it kind of encouraged me to then pursue psychology at university. And then, yeah, the rest I just kind of went down the path that most people do,
Yeah.
gain those years of experience. But that was the thing that really cemented it for me, that made me so sure that this is what I wanted to do. This is basically the route I wanted for myself.
That's such a powerful transition for you. I mean, going from, like you said, a person thinking, oh, you should do stuff in fashion, and then meeting this person and seeing someone that looked like you, representation, and you're like, no, this is the path I want to venture down into. And that's such a powerful thing. And again, it's really good to have you on board in the mental health sector, Sharmin. I spoke about it with another colleague in terms of, this field that we're in, there isn't many of us in it. And it's just so crucial for us to occupy a space where, you know, people within our cultures, within our families, see us do these things and say, okay, I want to go and do that, or I want to go and venture off into this space that I may not necessarily know how to. So I think that is so amazing what you've done. Talk to me on, let me see, talk to me on completing a doctorate.
Yeah, so that's kind of like any anyone that's sort of striving to become a psychologist knows the kind of battle you have to try and get onto like a professional doctorate. It's like, it's the one thing that most aspiring psychologists, let's say, want to do. And it's like, that's like their end goal, to get onto the doctorate, to do this, to complete this, and then become a psychologist. So I of course, was one of those people. And I just think back at how, focused I was. And I was just kind of quite, I put myself out there. I can fairly say that. I would kind of do anything and everything to find out more about kind of the field, what it required. So, as I told you about that example of going to that dementia ward,
Mm.
that was the very first thing. And then I met with other people who could tell me more about the role. And these were people who, you know, was just having a curious conversation with, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I know so and so who might be able to answer your questions better than I can. Do you want me to put you in touch with them?"
Yeah.
Like, yes, please do it. Anything that would be so helpful.
Yeah.
I remember going to like, traveling within London, but quite far from one place to the other, in between university, in between lectures, or whenever really, just to get in touch with that person who might be able to help me to get some experience, or, do anything to kind of extend on my current experience. I knew from very early on that experience was key to getting onto the doctorate.
Yeah.
You just had to have experience in like working with clients in a clinical setting, in a one-to-one setting, but also doing some research as well. So I knew I needed to be quite, active. I needed to put myself out there from the very beginning, and I did exactly that. Whether it was volunteering with my one of my lecturers to support her with the research she was doing, or going to a another ward and helping out with as like a almost like a support worker, but not really, not like that full on, if you know what I mean. So it was more on a voluntary basis. um so yeah, it was just all sorts of things to help me progress from one thing to the other, which then eventually I was able to kind of get secure an internship before I graduated, actually, which I was quite fortunate about. And yeah, so I worked as an assistant psychologist for a year, and then applied to a doctorate. And in all honesty, I was like, "Yeah, I'll just apply. I'll see what this is my practice application." And I
Yeah.
kid you not, Calvin, I was like, yeah, there's no way. People apply so many times before they get on.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm getting on. But just for the experience, I remember I was very much after getting as much experience as I could. I was
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna get that experience in the application, not just um clinical experience as well. So I applied. And I also told my good friend, also had similar aspirations to me, let's just apply. You apply too. I'll apply, but you apply as well. We'll apply together, and we'll get in, but it's okay. We'll just do it. See what
Yeah.
happens. We just went for it.
Yeah.
And to our surprise, well, for me, to my surprise, I can only speak for myself, but
Mm.
I got an interview and I was like, oh, what what's this? And
What's
he's like two universities, and I was fortunate enough to get both interviews, and I got offered a place in both as well. So
Wow.
I was shocked, and there was me thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm just applying for the sake of it."
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was really, really, really grateful because I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought it would take me a good number of years. Remember, I had only gained experience for 1 year after my undergraduate degree.
Mm.
Was not expecting it at all. So yeah, I was over the moon. I think, just being proactive, being quite focused really helped. But as a side note, I should mention though, for any listeners, especially, they might be thinking, clinical and counseling psychology doctorates are very different.
Yeah.
So, clinical psychology doctorate, I'm sure most people know, is funded. There's a lot more competition for it. It's just so much harder to get onto. I won't say counseling is easy because it isn't,
Yeah.
but th there's not as much competition from my perspective or what I've seen because, you have to fund that from yourself.
Yeah.
And it's not just the university fees, it's like paying for supervision, paying for personal therapy, paying for, you know, memberships to all these societies.
Mm.
So it really does add up, and obviously not everyone can take that route, and yeah, and it's not an easy route even if you do decide to self-fund it.
Yeah.
So I guess I should definitely mention that, had it psychology I was applying to, it would probably would have been very different.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's just obviously a difference between the two.
Thank you for that explanation, Charmin. Why is there a um a difference when it comes to the funding element when it comes to both counseling and psychology? How comes there's more, from what you said, there's more of a help when it comes to going for a psychology doctorate rather than it being a counseling one? What is the reason for that? I probably do know, but for the listeners, give us
Mm.
a breakdown of that, please.
I think, from my perspective anyway, I think because it's always been viewed as like the standard route to becoming a psychologist, it's viewed as like it was also one of the first ways of becoming a psychologist. So it dates back to, I think, actually, I don't even know when it began yet,
Mhm.
but it does date back way further in comparison to counseling psychology.
Mm.
Um, from my knowledge, I do think that counseling psychology was created to help with that level of competition there was for in relation to clinical psychology.
Mm.
I think it was just to try and even it out, especially because there were so very few places. Some universities offering as little as 5, 20 max. It obviously depends on the university, but there wasn't that many, and obviously there was a need for mental health professionals. So they need to kind of cater to that. They did need to train more people in order to kind of support more people. So yeah, I think it's just come about over time based on the needs of society, really.
No, that makes sense. And I guess that's why most people do the doctorate where it is counseling and psychology together, because it's the best of both worlds. There's one thing that you mentioned when it was your experience. You didn't mind going anywhere or any department. You just wanted to get as much groundwork as possible, as much intel, as much research, as much experience as you could, because you wanted to go down this path. Talk to me on someone who probably is like, you know what, I want to sign up for my doctorate. I want to go do this. Talk to them on resilience, Sharmin, and just like how you just kind of pushed yourself to be like, I'm just gonna apply. I'm just gonna go and do like what advice would you give to them to just make that step?
I think, it's sometimes quite easy to say, just go for it, and I do want to say that. But I think it's also, important to consider what option is there for you, counseling psychology, clinical psychology. I think it has a lot to do with resilience, but I think it's also important to think about whether, this role is for you.
Yeah.
It's not an easy one, and I don't want to deter anyone from doing this because I think it's a wonderful, wonderful experience, but it's not the be all end all. There are other, n to psychology, to becoming a therapist. This isn't the only way to do it. Obviously, if you want to go into academia, or if you really enjoy that, then definitely go for it. There is a heavy, heavy emphasis on research, and that's something that you really, you know, have to do as part of it. It's not most people think clinical counseling psychology is just, oh yeah, you see clients in therapy and that's sort of it. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Fine if that's what you want to do afterwards. Most people do, but there's a huge element of it that is contains research,
Yeah.
and you have to do your own novel research, something that isn't out there in the literature. So, and at the end, you have to conduct that experiment and then also write up, as it now stands, or as it did when I did it, 30,000-word thesis. And if you don't like research, there is a huge emphasis or huge portion of what you're not going to like.
Yeah.
So, as much as it sounds lovely to do a doctorate,
Mm.
it's, you do need to kind of do your research to think about, okay, what does that include? What am I going to be doing?
Yeah.
It's huge, huge sacrifice. It's especially if you're doing counseling because it means you're not going to get paid for the time that you're doing the doctorate.
Yeah.
So how are you going to survive. If you're moving out for university, how are you going to kind of get through it?
Mm.
Remember, student finance will only fund one of your degrees.
Literally.
So yeah, so you need to kind of like think about it from all aspects.
Mm.
And if you've got all the practical things out of the way and you do enjoy research, then I would say absolutely go for it.
Yeah.
But do it at your own pace. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, I need to do it next year. I need to get in. Oh, I need to get in within a specific number of times of applying. There's no limit. Go at your pace. It's all a process. Each application or each time you apply is just going to get stronger from one to the other because you're going to learn so much more. Even if, you're not successful after the interview, get some feedback, see what you can do. And I think the thing that helped me the most was speaking to other students who were currently on the doctorates. So do you remember how I was telling you I would kind of just speak to anyone and everyone who would be able to, offer any advice, if, obviously as long as they were willing to. But if I knew I was interested in applying to University of East London. That's where I did my doctorate. So I would go on LinkedIn. I would see who was attending that university in the first year. So that means they would have recently gotten to the doctorate. I was applying about December time, so it would have been about 3 months, so fresh in their mind in terms of their experience of the interview, the application process, everything.
Mm.
So I introduced myself, was polite, and just asked whether I could ask them a few questions about the application or the interview process. And more often than not, they were so lovely. They knew what it was like to be in my position
Mm.
and are more than happy to help in terms of kind of answering any questions I had, giving me tips, even telling me about what kind of questions they received in the interview.
Yeah.
And obviously, they're all quite similar anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was so, so helpful to just think outside the box a little bit and think about, okay, I don't know these people, but I'm sure if I ask them, someone might be able to answer a question I have
Mm.
about it, and that means I have more information than I did, like, if I don't ask them.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think just using every resource that you have, you'd be quite surprised at how much people are willing to help in those stages.
That is so powerful. And I think people sometimes when we embark on our journeys and our quest to learn and become, great in our fields, we forget that there actually is people that actually want to help once we share what we're doing.
Yeah.
Um, how was that for you, kind of? Because I know, yes, you had such resilience and you were just ready to go. Was there any fear in terms of like asking for help or anything, or was you kind of just like, nah, this is what I'm doing?
I think a part of me was like, I don't wanna bother people, but I found most people to be helpful. So when I sent that one message and they replied and they gave me so much information without even me requesting it, by the way, I just asked a very generic question like, "How was the interview?" or "How was the application?" They were like, "Oh, this is what happens, and then this, and then this," and then, like, she gave me a complete outline, and I was like, could not thank her enough. And yeah, I think for me, when I saw that response, I was like, well, if I have other questions and I want to ask other people, and what's the worst that can happen? Yes,
Mm.
they know me. They could, if they don't have time, they might ignore the message,
Yeah.
and that's about it. W- There's nothing more to it, you know. And I also used to always say you don't have to reply, so and more often than not, they would. So it just kind of I think there's this maybe unspoken sense of community of people who are in this process because everyone has been through very similar experiences and they know what it's like to be an AP, to try and get onto, a doctorate, to try and get the right experience to improve on your interview skills.
Mm.
I think everyone knows what that's like and how scary and, how difficult it can be. So
Yeah.
they do want to help. They do want to help.
I love that. the sense of community comes to mind when you speak on that. I want to go into working with parents and children.
Mhm.
Now, from just the offset and just me grasping or kind of looking at working with parents and children, there's so much, I must imagine, that comes with that, because you have the caregiver who you may not be working with directly, but you're working with their child. So they're going to always want to have a say in something, even though you directly want to work with the child because that's the person who's now been brought to your attention and who you're working with. How do you manage that, Sharmin? How is that relationship, with a parent who you might be working with, or you might be working with the child, and you obviously have to liaise with the parent? How is that?
Yeah, good question. I think it's obviously ultimately your client is typically the child in front of you, the one that you're working with.
Yeah.
So you make it very clear from the get-go that, everything is between yourself and the client, but if there's any risk issues or any kind of safeguarding concerns, then that will obviously be raised with the parents.
Yeah.
But otherwise, everything is confidential. It stays between you and the child. So the parents will know information if they need to know it, sort of thing. And I think setting that out very early on, making it quite clear what your boundaries are,
Yeah.
goes really, a long way. And most parents want what's best for their child, and they know how important that sense of confidentiality is to, your connection with their child in terms of in a therapeutic capacity.
Mhm.
So they want what's best for their child, so they do adhere to those
Mm.
boundaries, and they're less likely to push it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And typically, if the child is really young, we do have like a feedback period where, the last 10 minutes. So if I'm talking like if the child is less than 10, so
Mm.
around 8 years old, I would invite the parent back in the last 10 minutes of the session. And I would invite the child to then talk to the parent about what we discussed.
Yeah.
You know? So that way, I don't necessarily need to inform the parents of exactly what was kind of spoken about, but the parents will know because the child would only share what they're comfortable with sharing.
Mm. Yeah.
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 So for me, that's a good way to bypass that. But I think, ultimately, I found it's really helpful to have sessions with the parents as well,
Yeah.
uh, because it's all very quite holistic. It's important to work with the child and to help them through what they're going through, but sometimes we need to think about the wider context that they're in. So if you're trying to help them regulate their emotions or teach them ways to regulate their emotions, but parents might be doing it a completely different way, or they might not even know how to, you know, that's definitely that can something that can be taught via psychoeducation. How to talk to your child about their feelings.
Right.
All of these things can become, part of the therapeutic process. So you're helping the child, but you're also interacting with the parents to offer them some support on how to then help their child in that process. So it's all kind of a bit like yeah, it's very holistic.
Yeah. What do you find interesting or unique when working with a parent and a child? Like, is there a common thread? Obviously, every client is different, but I guess a parent, their concern and their nature towards their child will be the same.
Mm.
Do you? How do you manage that? I guess the expectation that they might have on you with their child, unconsciously or consciously, from what they've said to you. How do you manage that? Does it take a toll? Does it? I don't know. How does that affect you in any way?
Sorry, I didn't understand your question. Do you mind repeating it?
Just in terms of, like when you have a new client who was a child and the parents are discussing their concerns and they're saying, this is the reason I put my child. And then you can see like they just want you to fix them ultimately.
Mm. Mm.
Um, how do you take on that aspect of things?
Okay, yeah, That happens quite a lot. Um,
Mm.
I think there's a lot of reliance on therapy to help fix everything. And again, I would make it quite clear from the get-go that it's all, collaborative. It's not necessarily me doing the work with the child or the child then doing the work. It's everyone is involved here, even schools are involved to some extent, would share kind of some tips that parents or write up a letter for parents who can then share that with their teachers because the child might then be having tantrums in the classroom. Teachers might not know how to kind of address that. So we would kind of think about what what things can be put in place? Is it like a timeout card that they can be given so that whenever they feel really overwhelmed, they can show that to the teachers and then leave the room and go to, a safe space that they might be allowed to in the school. Different ways to kind of help the child to kind of regulate their emotions really. So I think once parents understand that it's not just about what's happening in therapy, it's about everything else, then they're less kind of, you know, put less pressure on therapy in itself and they kind of follow through and they have more not feedback, but they take in more of the feedback and report back to me about what's happening and what changes that they've seen or what challenges that they've faced. And then we kind of build on it through there. I think that really, seeing that collaboration between different parties, different people, that really kind of addresses the huge thing of, oh, yeah, therapy will sort everything out. Because remember, therapy is what, 50 minutes in a whole week. The
Mm.
child is in school, home, all these other hours. So 1 hour a week is not going to do that much. And, it's not going to magically change things unless changes are being implemented outside of that therapeutic space.
I agree with you. Specifically when you mentioned the work being done outside of the therapy space or the room, is so key. Because if it's not done, not to say that what we're doing is wasted, not at all. It's more of we may have to backtrack a bit because there's been a lengthy amount of time or the homework hasn't been done. And yes, we know life comes into play, but you know, you've come for a service, you've come for a reason. Let's collaborate and let's work together to get the work moving and completed and you know make the life of the individual that's come even greater. So no, I definitely agree with you on that, and I love how you just mentioned just your process and how you work with the parent, how you work with the child, and even when you said it's even good to have sessions with the parent, because I guess in some ways what you were trying to say or what you did say to me was if you're doing it with them, they can then get a sense of how it will be with their child.
Mm.
So I guess the anxiousness or the worry or the doubts beforehand can be left to one side. So no, I think that's so powerful. I really do. Jarman, speak to me on offering therapy in Bengali.
Yeah. Yeah, I do offer therapy in Bengali. It is at a level where I can communicate. It is at a level where I can explain most of like the concepts, in psychology. If you think about it, when a client comes to you, you wouldn't use, you know, psychological jargon. You would kind of reduce it to its simplest form and explain that to them. I use a very similar concept. I just sort of try to explain it quite like almost verbatim, really.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it can be quite difficult sometimes when, at the start I did find it a lot harder because I was like, I'm so used to speaking about these concepts, these things in English that I don't even know if there is a word for it in Bengali, Sometimes there is. Sometimes we just have to call it, you know, upset or sad or, there isn't like specific terms that we can kind of lean onto.
Yeah.
So in those times, we have to kind of be a bit more flexible. But I think most clients know what I'm talking about because they're feeling that,
Yeah.
you know, you describing that psychological distress to me. So they know exactly what I'm referring to when I talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be hard at the start, but once you've got that relationship going, once they trust you, once, you've got like a way of working and they've fully engaged, it's so, so enriching because it's like working with people sometimes, you know, from a different generation to me,
Yeah.
sh- who are people who would never have considered therapy before. It wouldn't have been something that they ever thought that they would find themselves in, but, they were, and they're so grateful that
Yeah.
they are because it's made a huge difference. And I think more often than not, when typically see clients from, um, the ones that need a Bengali speaking psychologist, it typically tends to be, trauma related because there's no other way for them to get over that
Yeah.
apart from therapy. Usually if it's, they're feeling anxious or they're feeling depressed, they've got family, they've got loved ones, they've got a sense of community, they've got ways of coping that they've developed over their whole lifetime, but nothing has prepared them for a car accident, perhaps.
Yeah.
So when things like that happen and they're like, well, the only thing that the Western kind of treatment plan states is, well, you need to go to therapy, you need to have trauma focused therapy.
Yeah.
And then like, well, nothing else has been working, so I'll give it a go. I'll
Yeah.
do it. So yeah, I've just been really, really fortunate to be able to kind of be able to offer that, and I think, I think of someone like my parents. If they had been in those situations, they would also be able to go to a Bengali speaking therapist and how much of a difference that can make. So I always hold kind of, when I speak to those from a similar background to me, it almost feels as though I'm speaking to like people from my community. Well, they are from my community. So it just feels that much more closer because of that shared, you know, sense of like culture,
Yeah.
that shared culture. Yeah. Yeah, it's lovely.
No, it definitely is. And I love how you spoke on from our backgrounds and our cultures. There was never ever a conversation about therapy or going to therapy.
No.
There was a certain way of doing things, of course, but now there is this option to go to therapy and there is this option to speak to someone. And because you're in the field now, there's a relatability. There's someone, oh, this person's from the same place as me. Let me,
Mm.
I want to, yeah, this is, this is, this is, this is nice. There's actually a therapist that I can actually relate to. If I say something or if I speak in my mother tongue, that they're going to know what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And I think that's so impactful and so powerful. There was one more thing I wanted to ask you before I let you go, because I know you got some stuff to do. Culturally sensitive therapy, and
Mm.
in brackets you put tree of life.
Mm.
Unpack that for me. What is that? Like what do I need to know and what do the listeners need to know about it?
I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you asked, Calvin, because it's something I'm really passionate about. And I think, it's something that I kind of was introduced to it more recently through one of my friends who had completed it. And she was telling me about it. And I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. I really want to go ahead and do that. So it is actually a very culturally sensitive form of therapeutic intervention, which is focused on narrative therapy. So through the process of telling stories, but also creating second stories. So often the first stories we might hold in our minds, could be about, okay, this awful, horrific thing happened to me. It stripped all of my, strengths away from me. Not in those terms, but, people will often hold other thoughts about kind of events, but with those kind of meanings. Because, often what we can do, if someone's been through some form of trauma,
Mm.
it's quite easy to, if not done properly, to re-traumatize someone. And that's obviously the last thing we would want in a therapeutic setting.
Yeah.
So it really, focusing on those second stories, more positive aspects to it really helps to kind of step away from that, to kind of get away from that and learn more of the strengths that you have based around this trauma, based around this difficult thing that you've gone. So the tree of life, so that's kind of like a basic. The tree of life itself is it's basically, you can do it one to one, you can do it in a group setting. It it can be adapted, and it can be done with children, it can be done with couples, families. So a lot of powerful systemic work can be, completed with this. It can be done with individuals, children, any groups with a shared sense of community, culture, or value. So it could be done in a workplace, it could be done in, a group of people, for example, that have gone through hardship.
Mm.
It could be done in a school, it could be done in any kind of setting, really. And what it does is, you've got the ground, and that represents your roots, where you grew up, your upbringing, your surname, your ancestors,
Yeah.
where you were born, all of those things. And then you've got also the ground, where you're at right now, and all of the things that you've been through, what you like, what you dislike. So a poem or a song or a dance that means, has quite some significance to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's in the here and now. And then you've
Mhm.
got the trunk of the tree. That's like your skills, your capabilities, your, any kind of attributes that you have.
Mhm.
And then the branches, think about, okay, so the tree of life is essentially, you have this drawing that you would complete in these workshops, and you've firstly got the ground, sorry, the roots, and they're literally the roots of the trees, and that includes where you grew up, your life, your identity, your history, your heritage, anything that kind of makes you a part of kind of this sense of community. And then you've got the ground, which is things like your favorite song, a special place, where you live now, where you like going, and anything that is quite important to you in that sense, and that
Mhm.
makes you feel quite safe. And then you've also got the trunk, which is some of the skills, capabilities, attributes that you've got. It could be things like cooking, it could be things like being a kind person, photography. It could be anything that you feel you're good at. And then you've got the fruits, and they're the things that people have given you. So, for example, it could be your dad's sense of humor, it could be your mom's necklace. So, it doesn't have to just be tangible. It could be any type of gift that you feel you've received from other people. And then the branch of the tree signifies your hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
It's things that you would like to achieve in the future. It's things that you can see for yourself. It's things that you would want to come true.
Mm.
And then finally, the leaves, and they're like the most important people in your life. They're the people that have been there for you, or have provided some sort of significance to you. It could be a friend, could be a family member, it could be a pet, anyone that's really significant to you. So that forms the basis of the tree. Once you've drawn your tree, you would then kind of take turns in interviewing each other about that tree.
Yeah.
And that's where the second stories come in. So tell me, where did you get that, skill of being a good cook from?
Mm.
And that develops into stories about, okay, well, I learned to cook from my mum, who I would watch endlessly cooking for, 40 plus people every other weekend, doing this, that, and the other. And then you would share a very specific story that you remember learning from her. you would remember kind of all these special moments. So therefore, you're focusing more on like the strengths
Yeah.
of your life as opposed to being quite, focused on the negative things that have happened and the negative meanings you might have taken from them.
Mm.
So it's something I'm really, really passionate about, and it's something that I would love to do more of. I really want to hold space for these kind of workshops for people within my community, or, any kind of community that would really benefit from it. I think there really needs to be a space for this rather than, you know, obviously CBT, psychodynamic, all these therapeutic interventions have their place, and Tree of Life obviously isn't for everyone because not everyone sees therapy as getting a five, not A5, A3 piece of paper and drawing a tree. A lot of people might not see therapy as that, but for those that are willing or would want to kind of, get creative or do it in a different way that feels a little bit more maybe empowering,
Mm.
then, this is definitely it for them. And it's, yeah, so, so powerful. I've done my own tree and absolutely loved it. It was developed to help support children with AIDS. So yeah, it's come a very long way, and Nazello, the founder of Tree of Life, has done a fabulous job, and she consistently offers these trainings
Yeah.
online as well, or does do in person too if requested. But phenomenal, just she's done a great job.
I'd love to attend one of these workshops. They sound really powerful, Sharmin.
They're really good. Definitely look into it because you can do the short ones, so you can do it at your own pace, or you can do the full intense all at once in a week,
Yeah.
whichever suits your kind of working, whatever you can manage with your commitments. Yeah, it's highly recommend.
Incredible. Sharmin, before we let you go, I just want to throw some rapid fun questions so the audience can get to know you better. All right?
Oh, of course, go for it.
All right. If you could work anywhere in the world remotely, where would it be and why?
Oh, okay. I think it would have to be Bali because love the weather, love the people, love the food. The food is just amazing, and I'm all for the scenery. Oh, I just would love to go back. I've been once for about 10 days, and I would just love to go back. I think the people are amazing. You can't go wrong.
Mm.
You just can't go wrong. It's a phenomenal place. There's just so much to do as well, not enough time. So if I was working there remotely,
Yeah.
I would probably work in the mornings
Yeah.
or as long as I need,
Yeah.
and then just spend the rest of my time at the beach, visiting all over. Yeah. So that would be mine. What about yours, Calvin? Would love to know yours.
Japan.
Oh,
Japan would be mine. I mean, it's a technological marvel, the people, the food, the cherry blossoms. I mean, we could go on. We could go on, but definitely Japan.
yeah.
I think that's one of, and the Maldives.
Mm,
I just having that scenery, like you mentioned, and you're just chilling and you're working, but you're in an environment where there is peace and you can like let go of what you've taken on even quicker because you're in such an atmosphere. So yeah, definitely
makes
those
a
two.
difference.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, do you have a favorite quote?
Hmm. I used to. Let me have a think. What would be my favorite quote? I think it's something along the lines of what is meant for you will always come for you, and what what you didn't get
Yeah.
was never meant for you. something along those lines, like, even if they're mountains apart, it will still reach you if it was meant to, if it has been sort of, if it's in your fate, if it's been destined to you,
Mm.
more from like a religious perspective. No, for me, at least, like personally, no one can take that away from you.
Yeah.
So whatever is meant to be,
Mm.
sort of will be for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
How
I
it
love
goes.
that. I love that. Do you have a favorite book or film?
My favorite book, I'm thinking, I did really like Gone Girl,
Okay.
and I really enjoyed the movie as well afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, it was such a thriller. It kept me on my feet. So I did enjoy that. I think I'm currently reading As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No, what is that? Sounds
Yeah, well, I've only just started it, so I haven't finished it. It's about a girl who is based in Syria, and it's based in the times when all the kind of the civil war was happening. And it's about whether she should flee Syria
yeah.
or she should stay where she is and support those in need. So she's actually a pharmacist, but she's somehow been turned into like a surgeon or a medical doctor because obviously there's no one else. So she needed to sort of step up, even though she's passionate about becoming a pharmacist. Um, so she's sort of, debating whether to leave, and she's got a pregnant sister-in-law,
Yeah.
and her sister-in-law does want to flee Syria, so she's kind of in two minds about sort of what she's going to do about that. So I'm still in the early stages of reading it,
Okay.
but I've really been enjoying it. I think the writing is absolutely phenomenal. Like, you can feel every sentence
Mm.
reading it.
Yeah.
Will highly recommend if you haven't. I haven't finished it. I don't want it to finish. I'm just like, just wanna stay with the book.
Yeah.
That's a
Powerful.
good one. Yeah.
Powerful. And last one,
Mm.
if you wasn't in the mental health sector, what would you be doing?
Ooh, big question. Do
Big question.
you know what? This is really bad, but sometimes I say I would have an easier job where I'm working in a complete different field where, sometimes working in the mental health field can be so, so draining, sometimes, especially working in private practice, because, you know, y- it's great. You're in charge of your own diary, but you could be your own worst person at the same time.
Mm.
So, sometimes if you don't uphold boundaries of, okay, I'm going to see a set number of clients, but this person wants to see me, so I'll just quickly fit them in. And it won't matter if I don't get a break, or, if I don't have a lunch break that day, I'll just squeeze it in the 10 minutes I have in between.
Yeah.
It can be so hard to say no sometimes, especially when it's, in the health
Yeah.
field. Um, because everyone obviously wants to, speak to you or wants to just sort of pick your brain or whatever it might be, and you just don't want to say no. And I think that's why we are in the field that we are, because we really want to help people, and that can come with its own challenges when we don't kind of keep those boundaries or work life balance. Um, so if it was up to me, I would probably be in any field that doesn't require so much pressure in terms of you feel like you're personally responsible for someone else.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I haven't exactly thought about what field, but sometimes I compare to my job to like a family member's job, and theirs just seems like, well, they can just shut their laptop whenever they want and walk away, and they're good.
Yeah.
Whereas we have to go to supervision, and we're like, CPD and personal therapy and all of that good stuff. And it can be a lot from time to time. Oh, not to add the reports, the letters, especially when someone's legal case is tied to your report.
Yeah.
It's, it can be a lot. It can be a lot of pressure. So anything that isn't, that doesn't impact someone's personal well-being or health,
Mm.
can I see it sometimes as, "Oh, I wish, I didn't have to deal with something like that today." Or when a risk comes up, it's like, "Oh no, how am I going to manage this and make sure this person's safe?"
Yeah.
Support that they but at the same time, I can't tell you how satisfying. Oh, I don't have to tell you you're in the same gig. It's so satisfying, and, the job satisfaction you feel for being able to offer that support and help to someone after, they've just been through a really difficult period can be so, so enriching to my own life, because it's like a sense of purpose is, yeah, it's really, really satisfying. I think especially when you get feedback such as, this thing that you told me about, it's
Mm.
helping me. My panic attacks have just gone. Like,
Wow.
I don't even know how, but they've just gone.
Fun. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really empowering. It's really powerful work we do, and I'm grateful. I'm really, really grateful to be in this position.
No, it's an honor to work alongside you, Sharmin, and I just pray for continual success in everything that you do. Um, Sharmin, someone's heard you today. They've heard all the knowledge, they've heard the insights, they've heard your experience, and they want to reach out and talk to you. What's the best way for them to contact you?
So they can contact me on my website. So if they just Google the Mind Remedy, it should come up. Or www.themindremedy.co.uk. They can Google me on LinkedIn. Sorry, they can Google me or search me on LinkedIn. Either is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to kind of, answer any questions about anything, wherever it might be. If it's like any questions about applications,
Mm.
I'm more than happy to help, just like the help I received.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything I can do to support anyone in similar situations, I'd be more than happy to. Yeah, so just reach out to me there or info@themindremedy.co.uk.
Perfect. I'll make sure to link everything you said in the description once we publish this. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been your host, Calvin Anderson, for the Check In With podcast. We have had the impeccable Sharmin Aktar today. Have a good night. Take care. Speak soon. God bless.